to the Free Kick Podcast. My name is Todd, and it's been more than a couple days since the Philadelphia Union lost to FC Cincinnati 2-1, which means the Philadelphia Union's 2024 MLS season has come to an end. First time missing out on playoffs since 2017, and it feels a little strange, right? It feels a little strange that this is going to be the longest offseason for a lot of fans and a lot of media people, myself included, since I've been covering the team. It's strange, really, to see, look, things aren't going to kick back up until January, and we'll have no Union in the playoffs, and we'll see how many of you guys pay attention to MLS playoffs now, and we'll see what the offseason has in store. And I've said it so many times on this podcast where, in my opinion, this is the biggest offseason for the Union in quite some time. And you could argue that this is potentially the biggest offseason in the club's history since they were established in 2010. And I'm optimistic, and I understand why fans aren't. I understand why fans don't believe a word that ownership says. What Jim and Ernst Tanner may say at their end of the season press conference, which we're not sure when that's going to be scheduled yet. And hopefully I'll be able to get there in person this year. A lot of questions. And I think Jim and Ernst both know that these are probably going to be some of the most difficult questions that they've been asked and that they're going to have to answer. And I do think it's fair with the way the season went. And so for all those reasons that I listed, and you guys know how the season went, you guys know who was missing, you guys know the terrible summer form this club was on. I don't have to remind you guys, and I'll remind you guys of all that in a couple weeks when we do our end of the season episode. I want to go ahead and leave that episode for whenever the Union schedule their end of the season press conference, because I want to include some sound bites from that, and hopefully that leads to good discussions. And I do not want to go back and listen to my season prediction show because I was completely off with everything I predicted for the Union. And if I recall, I said this season the Union need to win a trophy, and it doesn't have to be MLS Cup. It can be Leagues Cup. It can be CCC. It can be the Supporters Shield. It doesn't matter. The Union needed to come away with a trophy this season, with running the same team back yet again. And holy crap, they fell so short of those expectations, and no CCC next year for this club. And hopefully the club's participating in the US Open Cup next year, but you have one less competition, and maybe that's a good thing for the Union, because as we know that MLS teams, they struggle in MLS at the beginning of the year. They struggle in CCC at the beginning of the year because the Liga MX teams are already through their season in fine form, and MLS is just starting back up. And so maybe it's a good thing that the Union missed out on CCC. But again, we're not going to talk about any of that stuff in this episode. We'll leave that for whenever the Union have their end of the season press conference, and we go over answers from that press conference. But yeah, a lot to talk about with what this season or what this game played out to be against FC Cincinnati. It was a game that the Union were in. The Union had a chance to win. But we do have news to get to. I do have Blunder of the Week. And there's no way I can do 3 stars on the night for how poor the Union played against Cincinnati. Off the top of my head, if you guys want to know real quick, I think Jack McGlynn was good. I think Quinn Sullivan was good on the night. But that's it. That's really it. I don't think anybody else really impressed on the evening. And again, we can get into why I feel that way. But like I said, we have news and we have Blunder of the Week, and I'm sure all you guys know what Blunder of the Week is going to be. There's only one good nomination this week. The right nomination, I would say. And we'll talk about that goal. We'll talk about that goal here in a second. Trust me. But yeah, let's go straight into the news. So anyway, the first topic I want to talk about in the news segment is Fabian Herbers had his option declined by the Chicago Fire, making him a free agent. And before I even say anything else, I feel like half of you guys are going to stop listening to the podcast. You guys are turning me off because you know exactly what I am going to say next. And for people who don't, that is, should the Philadelphia Union bring Fabian Herbers back to the club? And this is where you guys turn me off when I say, I think the Union should pursue Fabian Herbers. And I definitely get it. Some of you guys that have been around since 2016 are like, absolutely not. You do not bring him back to the club. He was not great when he was here. He had a great first season. The next 2 years were not good at all. There's a reason why the Union traded him to Chicago Fire. Absolutely not. Do not bring him back. But my argument for bringing Fabian Herbers back to the club is there's no guarantee that you resign Alejandro Bedoya. He's a free agent. There's no guarantee that Leon Flock resigns with the club. Tom Bogert came out with a report today and said that sources have said to him that he may have his mindset on returning to Germany. And if that's the case, well, you're down 2 midfielders. Jack McGlynn, I could definitely see a possibility of him getting sold this winter if an offer good enough comes for him. And there was interest for Jack in the summertime. Nothing materialized. Stayed with the club for the rest of the season. We'll see what the wintertime brings. But if you potentially go down 3 midfielders, you've got to find players to replace the guys you're losing. And I totally get it, right? Fabian Herbers is not Leon Flock. He's not Alejandro Bedoya. He's not Jack McGlynn. But I do think that there's something to be said for how MLS players are valuable. Players that have played in the league and had success in the league. And some of you guys are saying, well, that's not Fabian Herbers then. Don't bring in Fabian. He's not successful. But I would say he actually has been for Chicago Fire, especially the last 2 years. In 2023, he had 36 appearances, 5 goals, 2 assists, and 2,142 minutes played. This past season, he had 32 appearances, 3 goals, 4 assists, and 2,203 minutes played. So 7 goal contributions in the last 2 seasons each. 14 goal contributions in 2 seasons. It's not bad. 160 appearances for Chicago, 16 goals, 11 assists. 31 years old. And yes, when he was with the Union, he was playing as a winger. But if you watched Chicago Fire the last couple of years, you would notice that Fabian's a player that can play as a number 8. He can play as a defensive midfielder. He can fill in as a cam. There was actually times, too, where we saw against the Union this year when the Union went up 3-1 in Chicago. They moved Herbers to a right wing back. And so he's versatile. And I think because of that, he's a player that the Union should be intrigued by. Yes, obviously it didn't work out with Andres Pereira. It didn't work out with Joaquin Torres. Some of you guys are going to say that it didn't work out with Damian Lowe. In my opinion, Damian Lowe did exactly what you wanted from him. But you want players that can play in multiple different positions. You want players that you can trust, that you can rely on. Nobody's saying that Fabian Herbers, or at least I'm not saying that he should come in here and be a starter. But I think occasionally starting, coming off the bench and closing out a game, You're looking for a little bit of offense? Then why not? He made $421,000 last year with Chicago Fire, and I definitely wouldn't pay that if I'm Ernst Tanner. I would say if he's willing to take a little bit of a cut between $325,000 to $350,000, I think that's a respectable number to pay him. And you look at what the Union, we'll use Joaquin Torres as an example, did not fit in at all with the club. And the Union are paying him $350,000. And he's not even at the club right now. He's on loan. And we saw how fast the Union moved on from Joaquin Torres. And it was always going to be a tricky signing because he wasn't a 10. He wasn't a second striker. He was a winger in Montreal. The Union don't use wingers. But unlike Joaquin Torres, Fabian Herbers, yes, started out as a winger. He's adapted to playing as an 8, as a 10, as a 6, unlike Joaquin Torres. And so I think if that number is right, between $325,000 to $350,000, then absolutely, I would try to explore that option. And yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there's option for Fabian around the league. I mean, San Diego would make sense. Brand new team, looking for MLS experience, players that know what it takes to grind out for 34 games in the league, traveling all over the country. San Diego, I wouldn't be surprised if, that's a potential landing spot for him. But if you're Ernst Tanner, if you're that front office, then why wouldn't you explore a possibility of bringing him back to the club? Like I said, I'm not saying he should be a starter. I'm saying he should be a player coming off the bench, closing out a game, occasional spot start. 31 years old, you give him a 2-year guaranteed contract, an option for a 3rd year. And I think that's a fine move. 34 years old at the end of the contract, if you take up that option for the 3rd year, I don't think it's a bad move whatsoever. But we'll see what the club does. Will they go after Fabian? Do they make a move? Maybe, maybe not. If I was the club, $325,000 to $350,000, in my opinion. Next up, Union 2, which is going to be the next episode that we do. Going to the Union 2 versus Crown Legacy game this Saturday at 5 p.m. at Subaru Park. And I know that's typically Kyle and Jillian Almany's thing. They are the only people that I know that cover them pretty much week in, week out, podcast-wise, writing articles. They do a fantastic job. Definitely their territory, but going to go to the game this Saturday. Going to go ahead and try to give you guys good content for that game. And at least there's still a Philadelphia team that's playing playoff soccer. And I think they had over 2,000 fans this past weekend against a tough New York City 2 team. And hopefully more fans come out this Saturday at Subaru Park. I know the weather is going to be colder this weekend than it was this past weekend. But look, this team's exciting. I've seen them 3 times this season. Twice in person, and then the other time watching on Apple. But they're a young, exciting group of players, and you look at the next group of players that are going to be playing for this team in the next couple of years. CJ Olney, Frankie Westfield, David Vasquez, Kevin Sullivan, Andrew Rick. Will Near Pierre be a Philadelphia Union player in the future? Maybe, maybe not. And I'm sure there's going to be players that we see rise up from the second team and get rewarded for their good performance. And there's just a lot of good players on this team. And I think that they could use everybody's support. You see the images, you see the videos of what St. Louis 2 are doing in selling out their stadium. And why can't Philadelphia Union 2 get more than 2,000 people there this weekend? Tickets are dirt cheap. I think they're like $7 a ticket. I mean, you can't get a ticket cheaper anywhere else in the city to see a professional soccer game. And I know some of you guys would say, well, I wouldn't say it's professional soccer. I would say it's semi-professional. Well, it's still better than NISA, in my opinion. It's better than USL 2. I think I would probably put it on par with USL 1, but I'm sure there's some USL 1 teams that could definitely beat MLS Next Pro teams for sure. But the moral of the story is Go out to Subaru Park this Saturday at 5 p.m. See the Union take on Crown Legacy. Union 2 won on the road in their only matchup ever against Crown Legacy 3-0. We saw Leandro Soria score in that game, Frankie Westfield score in that game, and CJ Olney scored in that game. And Crown Legacy, if you guys aren't familiar, that is Charlotte's second team. So Charlotte in the playoffs, fantastic season this year in MLS. Fantastic setup down there with their second team. Tommy Wilson, former head of the academy here in Philadelphia, now the technical director in Charlotte. And Charlotte, really, really, really well-run organization. And I think they're going to be a staple for years to come in the development game with young players and with a competitive MLS team. But point number 3, if you guys haven't noticed, I'm definitely delaying talking about this FC Cincinnati match because, yeah, it was not an enjoyable game, but we do have 3 clips to play from that game, so I should hurry up the news segment here. So point number 3, I want to bring up news segment number 3. Philadelphia Union have signed Jeremy Rafanello through 2026 with options for the 2027 and 2028 seasons. So Jeremy was originally signed through 2024 with a club option for 2025. His current contract saw him earning $107,000 annually and then some change. And so Jeremy gets, some of you would say, a well-deserved contract extension, and some of you would say, why are we wasting it on this guy? But this year saw career highs for him in terms of starts, which were 4, games played, 11, in shots, in minutes played. And yeah, I mean, made his debut last year for the Union against New York Red Bulls. He was originally in the academy in Red Bulls. Union then had him in their academy, went to Penn State. Union then decided to give him a homegrown contract, and then the rest is history. And so Jeremy Rafanello, 24 years old, is an attacking midfielder, can play as an 8. We saw this year. But yeah, I don't mind this move because like I was saying about Fabian Herbers, and I know Jeremy Rafanello definitely does not have the experience that Fabian has. But at the same time, right, you need these type of players to fill out your roster, and he's not going to cost you an arm and a leg. And I know maybe some of you guys are saying, well, the money that you're spending on him could be used on other players, could target other free agents. And I definitely get that. I definitely understand that. But listening to Jim Curtin speak about Jeremy multiple times this season, talking about his work rate, talking about how, yeah, it's a little unfair to him how the seasons went, where opportunities to get more game time wasn't available because they were trying to play pickup. They were trying to pick up as many points as they could and get into the playoffs, and so that kind of stunted his development. There really was no space for him this season with Union 2, and so he was kind of stuck in a situation where he's just on the bench, and the Union felt comfortable giving him a contract extension for just the hard work that he does in his limited appearances, what he does in practice. And look, I can't imagine that the Union are paying him much more than $125,000, $130,000 maybe. We'll see come the springtime once the MLSPA release the salaries for the players. So yeah, I'll be curious to see what Jeremy Rafanello's new contract looks like, but it can't be too big of a salary upgrade, in my opinion, from his 107 that he was making this season. But the last bit of news I want to talk about is the Philadelphia Union have also announced that they have signed Quinn Sullivan to a new contract through 2027 with an option for 2028. Quinn was earning $153,000 this season, which included an option for the 2025 season. He appeared in all 34 MLS games, 25 starts, recording 5 goals and 11 assists in 2,402 minutes played. Sullivan was also second on the team in big chances created, 13, third in chances created, 43, first in shots, 77, and third in shots on target at 23. Quinn Sullivan and Kai Wagner are the only two players to play in all 45 games this season in all competitions for the club. And yeah, I mean, what a season that Quinn Sullivan had. Took the starting right midfielder spot from Alejandro Bedoya. And yeah, he had moments this season where he was inconsistent. I put out a tweet months ago complaining about the Union's record with Quinn Sullivan playing as a striker compared to as a midfielder. And yeah, of course, his numbers didn't look great. And a big part of that was because Andre Blake wasn't in the net. But I think we can all see that whenever Quinn played, he was better as a right midfielder. That's where he was making his most impact, where he can drift out wide on the right side of the field and take players on 1v1. And that's what this team lacks is players that are confident in taking the opposition on 1v1. And not many players have the confidence, have the dribbling ability that Quinn Sullivan has on this team. And yeah, I mean, there's a reason why he had the second most big chances created with 13, third in chances created with 43. The guy creates chances. The guy takes risk. And at 20 years old, I mean, the sky's the limit. And somebody, I think it was Curtin, who had asked me on Twitter, I didn't respond to this yet, my apologies, but he said, do I think Quinn Sullivan will stay here the whole duration of the contract? And I don't. And maybe some of you guys are like, well, why would you sign him through 2027 with an option for 2028 if he isn't going to be here for the whole contract? And the answer is simple. It's like you look at ways to get the most value out of players. When you go to sell them, you want them to have multiple years on the contract, which means that the team that you're selling him to, doesn't have much room for negotiations because, well, look, if you're not going to pay our asking price, he still has a contract with us for multiple years, and we're fine holding on to him. Unlike Julian Kranza, where the Union had zero leverage to negotiate a transfer fee this summertime, winds up leaving on a free to Feyenoord, and that sell-on clause, I'm sure, is pretty non-existent. And so it's disappointing that the Union got nothing for Julian Kranza, but when the time does come to sell Quinn Sullivan, he'll have multiple years left on that contract. So, and that's why, Colton, you signed him to that contract extension. But fantastic season for Quinn Sullivan. And Ernst Tanner came out in his statement and said, Quinn had a breakout season this year, showing how high his potential ceiling can be, said Philadelphia Union sporting director Ernst Tanner. As one of only two players to appear in every regular season match, his growing importance to the club is clear. He stepped up with versatility and maturity this season, playing wherever he was needed. Yes, he absolutely played wherever is needed. We're happy to have come to an agreement to keep him with Union for the coming years. So yeah, I mean, it's going to see Quinn definitely making more than $153,000. Definitely a well-deserved promotion. One thing I am a little bit shocked about is there was no mention in the press release of this being a U22 deal. You look at players like Diego Luna, Brian Gutierrez with Chicago Fire. I would say Quinn Sullivan's probably one level with both of those players, and they're both on U22 deals, and no mention whatsoever if Quinn's on one or not. So I guess the good thing is if he's not, well, you know that the Union are going to potentially go out and sign multiple U22 players this season, as they should. You definitely need, I would say, a U22 midfielder, probably an 8. I'd be fine with a 6, and then an attacker. You definitely need a U22 striker. I mean, Julian Kranza was essentially that the last couple seasons for the Union. Then he graduated from that, and look, Inter Miami spent $6 million to bring Julian to their club, and that's what it's going to take to get a quality player like Julian Kranza, is spending millions of dollars. And I knew Ernst Tanner at the town hall said, well, spending $5 million doesn't necessarily mean that, that's going to fix all your problems. But look, Diego Rossi, Diego Gomez down in Inter Miami, Julian Kranza when he was at Inter Miami. You paid $3 million, I know, for Diego Gomez, but Diego Rossi, LAFC, paid over $6 million. Julian Kranza, about $6 million. I would argue that you can find quality players with that amount of money. So, yeah, hopefully the Union do the right thing this offseason and spend on U22 players. You guys are probably sick and tired of me talking about how valuable that mechanism is in MLS. It's something that the Union absolutely need to be taking advantage of. And Quinn Sullivan, for what it's worth, wasn't announced as one in the press release. But it's enough of the news. We delayed talking about this Philadelphia Union versus FC Cincinnati match long enough. And God, where to start? I mean, the Union get off to such a hot start with Quinn Sullivan scoring in the second minute. And you feel good about yourself. You say, okay, this is exactly what the Union needed. Now let's go up by multiple goals. Can they go up by multiple goals? And you look at the Union, they actually were in the top 3 this season in MLS in goals scored within the first 15 minutes of games. And we all know that goal scoring wasn't an issue for this club this season. Absolutely was not an issue. 6 most goals scored in MLS this year, 62. They get off to a flying start with Quinn Sullivan. It's great work with Jack McGlynn and Nate Harrier on Quinn Sullivan, all 3 homegrown players combining on the right side of the field. Fantastic finish for Quinn Sullivan. Low-driven shot past Celentano's right post. And you think, okay, look, let's get multiple goals here. Let's go up by multiple goals. This is a Cincinnati team that's been struggling. They've lost the last 3 games coming into Subaru Park. Only 2 wins in the last 10 games, I believe it was. And this is a team that wasn't very confident. And as soon as they see the ball go in the back of the net for the Union, they're probably panicking a little bit. Like, oh no, here we go again. Defensively, we're not sturdy. And I think the Union probably knew that. And coming into this game, I think I was actually a little bit concerned, not knowing if the Union were going to be able to live up to the pressure of this game. And yeah, I mean, at the start of the game, it looked like they were absolutely going to live up to that start. But then you look at where everything went downhill afterwards. You lose Daniel Gazdag within the first 15 minutes. We'll talk about Daniel Gazdag here in a little bit. Then you give up the goal in extra time of the first half. Yes, I know that it was about 30 seconds over the allotted time, but look, you play until that whistle's blown. Referee didn't blow the whistle, and Cincinnati take advantage of it and catch the Union sleeping multiple times on that goal. And if you guys watched the goals breakdown video, you guys saw exactly what I was talking about, where Jack Elliott had an opportunity to clear the ball, doesn't clear it out, only goes as far as Acosta. And then Jacob Gazdag goes to clear the ball out, hits Quinn Sullivan. And Kubo was able to get the ball, play it out to the 18-yard box to Assad, and he does the rest. Puts it in the back of the net, and game's tied 1-1. And by the way, Philadelphia Union, the worst team in MLS this season in terms of conceding goals outside the 18-yard box at 15. Stat courtesy by Tom Berger, because if I had the option to get Opta, I'd be able to see this awesome data too. But yeah, when I inquired a couple of seasons ago, I got quoted $10,000 for Opta for one season, not a lifetime membership, one season. Insane. Absolutely was not spending $10,000 on data. But the Union have conceded 15 goals outside the 18-yard box this season, which is the most in MLS. And you look at the Union's goalies, 10 out of 15 is Oliver Zemler. 10 goals. Oliver Zemler conceded outside the 18-yard box. Andre Blake with 4, and then Andrew Rick with 1. But I do not want to dog on Oliver Zemler. We'll save that for a later podcast. He's got enough in past episodes for me. But conceding a goal outside the 18-yard box before the break, right when the referee was about to blow his whistle. Not ideal whatsoever for the Union. And they go down and are tied 1-1. You start the second half. And what a goal by Jacob Gazdag. A fantastic own goal. Starts the season down in Saprissa with the own goal and ends the season with an own goal against FC Cincinnati. And if I'm not mistaken, didn't Jacob Gazdag score an own goal when the Union played Columbus Crew at home? I'm pretty sure. It's a lot of own goals from Jacob Gazdag the last 2 seasons. And I think what frustrates me, and I don't expect you guys to know this stat. I had to go look this up, do it manually myself. But when you look at the last 5 minutes of the first half and the first 5 minutes of the second half, the Union have conceded 10 goals. 10 of their 55 goals were scored during that time frame. That's really, really poor. And that's something I want to ask Jim Curtin about. Is it a lack of concentration? Why aren't the players locked in 5 minutes before halftime, 5 minutes after halftime? I can think of the goal that Luis Muriel scored with Orlando City at Subaru Park. You think about the goal a couple weeks ago against Columbus Crew with Farsi. Bad defending there by the Union, out of position, and so many goals this season. So many goals this year where it's just silly mistakes that, we started to become accustomed to this year because it was happening so often. Wasn't really the case the last couple seasons, and yes, mistakes happen for sure, but the rate that they were happening this year for the Union, it was unbelievable, and I became numb to it just like you guys did. I'm sure you guys expected the Union to concede crappy goals. And going to Subaru Park, I've said it before, where, I wasn't confident going there just because the Union hadn't shown that they're confident there at all this season. Only 4 wins at home. Unbelievable. 4 wins in 17. And I'll give all the negative stats with our end of the season review episode, but it wasn't good. And to concede 10 goals within the last 5 minutes of the first half, the first 5 minutes of the second half, it's really poor. And I don't know what needs to change mentally, how to get the players to lock in. But when I look at that, when I read that, to me, it's like the players aren't locked in. Okay, if it's 1 or 2 goals, 3 or 4 even, I'd understand that. But the way that you concede these goals, especially the second half, it's like, yes, it's so deflating to give up a goal. You go into halftime after leading 1-0, now you're tied 1-1. It's so deflating. Your whole game plan changes. I totally get that. But still, you got to be locked in. And to score an own goal, come on. You watch that play back. Jacob Gazdag is looking down at the ball, not looking at where Andre Blake is. Andre Blake speaking to him. He has his hands up saying, hey, you have time. Nobody's on you. He comes out to receive the pass from Jacob Gazdag, and Gazdag, as soon as he kicks the ball, he lifts his head and says, oh, crap. Andre Blake isn't in the net where I expected him to be, and the ball winds up in the back of the net, and that's the last goal of the season. Really, really poor. But you know what else is poor? 27 points dropped. That's the most in MLS. 27 points. It's unbelievable. For a team that is 6th in MLS in goals scored with 62. Offense was not an issue. It was holding on to the lead. This team could not do it. 27 points. Way too many points. And pick. It doesn't matter what game you bring up. I always bring up the Chicago Fire game. Yes, that game hurt a lot. That's the game that I will talk about for a while. You do not lose a 3-1 game. The Miami game at home, you're up 2 players. You do not lose that game 2-1. And you're up a player against Montreal at home. As soon as you go down a man, and now it's 10-10, you concede. It's unbelievable. It is unbelievable just watching the different ways this team conceded goals. And to drop 27 points, it's inexcusable. 12 one-goal losses this year for the club. How many times in the past have we seen the Union win those one-goal games? And that wasn't the case this year. They dug themselves a hole so deep that it was so difficult to crawl out of. They were down 3-1 to Columbus a couple weeks ago and get it within 1, lose 3-2. Well, what about Atlanta United? You're down 2-0. You come back and you tie the game 2-2. You go down to DC United and you're down 2-0. You tie the game up 2-2. This club finds ways to just dig the hole way too deep. And it's extremely hard to crawl the way out of it. And that's why they missed out on the playoffs. So 12 one-goal losses. You want to know the Union's record versus playoff teams in the East? 2-11-5. 8 one-goal losses against playoff teams. Against the top 4 in the East, Miami, Columbus, Cincy, Orlando. 8-0. No wins, no draws, 8 losses. How many of those were one-goal losses versus the top 4? 7. 7 out of the 8 games, one-goal losses. And the Union were actually up in 4 of those 8 games. Just, it's unbelievable how this team found so many ways to lose. And speaking about losing, this game against Cincinnati, where I thought the game was lost, was when Daniel Gazdag had to come out of this game. Once you lost Daniel Gazdag, it was over. His injury changed everything. And this is what Jim Curtin had to say after the game on that injury.
Yeah, I still think Danley was the right one. So after we scored in the 3rd minute, if you remember, the minutes after that, they gave us some real problems. They came at us really good with the 2-10s, the way that they played it with Kubo up top and the 2-10s in there. So we went with Danley's kind of quickness and ability to break plays up, and we went more to a 4-4-2 kind of flat. And it was comfortable until we don't clear a ball at the end of the half, and then that changes the whole narrative. And goals change the reality of things. I thought we actually played a pretty organized half, even after Danny went out. Had a goal. I agree. It is important to be proactive and go for a second goal. I understand that, but we can talk about who is that direct 10 replacement to do it right now in a game like this with still 85 minutes left, So we went with that sub. Danley did a good job. I thought he played a good game, but wasn't enough on the night.
And so Jim Curtin saying that, the substitution bringing Danley in for Daniel Gazdag, that was the right move. That was the move we had to make. And you heard him. He said it right there. He said, but we can talk about who is that direct 10 replacement to do it right now in a game like this with still 85 minutes left, so we went with that sub. And to me, that's Jim Curtin not trusting Jeremy Rafanello, not trusting Kevin Sullivan. And so the Union went to a 4-4-2 flat, bringing in Danley, and that meant you had no 10. And when you had no 10, your attacks are going to come from out wide. And so what does Cincinnati do well? Taking away attacking options out wide because they play with fullbacks or wingbacks. And so that means anything down the middle, they're playing with 3 center backs, they're playing 1v1. Well, now one of those center backs can help out the other center back because you don't have to worry about one of the 2 8s pushing up in Danley or Leon. Neither player is totally offensive. I would say Danley's more offensive than Leon Flock. Nobody would disagree with me here, but you don't have that 10. And because of that, you don't have that passing option in the middle of the field. You don't have those quick transitions between Daniel Gazdag in the front two. You don't have Daniel Gazdag pulling players out of position. And once you lost Daniel Gazdag, everything changed. The Union struggled. And they struggled massively to create chances in this game. Really, really bad. Only 3 shots on target out of 14 shots taken. An XG of 0.81. And yes, I know XG is not everything, but the main point is that they only had 3 shots on target. And so you convert on one of them with Quinn Sullivan. But then the other 2 chances you create that were on target, they weren't high leverage chances. A lot of shots were blocked. A lot of shots were forced outside the 18-yard box, which we know the Union, on a team that's going to score a lot of goals from outside the 18. You don't have a lot of players that are going to score from that distance. Jeremy Rafanello is a player that can, but you opt to bring him on so late in this game. And it makes no sense to me. And especially when we talked about it, you give Jeremy Rafanello a contract extension. And I know Jim Curtin says, look, his minutes were hindered this season because of the position we found ourselves in with, chasing points. I understand that completely. But you made it so much more difficult for yourself not having a 10. And Jeremy is not a great number 10, but he has more experience than Kevin Sullivan at the MLS level. He has more chemistry with these teammates than Kevin Sullivan. And if you weren't going to bring in Jeremy Rafanello, then play Kevin Sullivan. Yes, I get it. He's 15 years old. But you absolutely need a number 10 in there. And at first, when I saw Danley coming on, I'm thinking, okay, is this going to be a Quinn Sullivan or Jack McGlynn as the 10? But you quickly saw within, I would say, the first 3-4 minutes of the game that, oh, no, they went to a 4-4-2 flat. And it's a formation that they don't play a lot of. And for the reasons why I said why it didn't work out, yeah, you lost so much in the middle of the field. And losing Daniel Gazdag completely changed everything, in my opinion. But the next point that I want to bring up is, people complain about only using 3 subs in this game. Why didn't you bring in a Sam Adeniran? Why didn't you bring in a Chris Donovan? Sam Adeniran, for people who don't listen to Jim Curtin's press conferences during the week, the last 2 weeks, Sam had a foot injury. And so he wasn't able to really practice that much with his teammates. Friday was his first full day of practice. And yeah, they probably weren't going to bring him in because of fitness levels and just really not practicing with his teammates. But you still have Chris Donovan. Hasn't made an appearance since the game against Toronto in July. And yes, I think we all know Chris Donovan is not an MLS level player, but they're attackers. And what did you need? You needed goals. And so this is what Jim Curtin had to say in terms of defending his substitution choices with the players that were on the field.
Yeah, look, I would say first, once Danny goes out, our team looks a lot different, right? We don't have a true 10 that's underneath the 2 strikers, right? So, that's the first part of it. I still think, we were a little bit proactive and in the 60th minute went to a back 3, pulled off a center back, had 3 of our best offensive players that were left. Danny's obviously our best goal scorer, but our highest goal scorer, but we still have, Ty, Mikel, and Quinn on the field, and almost went to a version of a 3-4-3 and tried to be as offensive as we could. That is us taking risk, to be honest. And the guys that were on the field are more likely to score and make a play than anyone else that was there. So that's not just my opinion. I think that's a fact. And we weren't able to create enough to give Cincy enough problems. But again, once you start the second half the way we did against a good team, you lose the energy in the building. Obviously, you lose the belief, the confidence, and from there, we made it really hard on ourselves.
Wow. That is not a great endorsement for Chris Donovan, Sam Adeniran, anybody else on the bench. Quote, and the guys that were on the field are more likely to score and make a play than anyone else that was there. So that's not just my opinion. I think that's a fact. End quote. Wow. Talk about shots fired. I have not seen Jim Curtin like that in a very long time. Jim Curtin is not a manager that throws his players under the bus, but to say no, it's not just my opinion. It is a fact that the players that we had out on the field are going to make a play, that are going to get a goal for us, and then the players we had on the bench. Wow. Wow. I mean, that's all I can say. I mean, if you're Jesus Bueno, who has goals this season for the Union, had 3 goals in MLS this season. Yeah, he's more of a defensive player than he is an attacking player. But how's that make you feel? Man, the 2 strikers and Chris Donovan and Sam Adeniran. Hearing that, I would not be happy with my head coach saying that. But look, I think you do need more of that. I think you do need more of that from Jim Curtin. Yes, it's important to protect your players from the media and not to throw them under the bus to keep that strong relationship. But at the same time, players need a little kick in the butt. Players do need to not be publicly humiliated, but, send a warning shot in the media, I think. And that doesn't work for all players. And I think that comes down to coaches knowing what's going to get players to tick and what's not. But yeah, to say, yeah, we're going to leave our 2 strikers on the bench. We don't trust them to get us a goal. It's not just my opinion. It's a fact. It's pretty damning. That is pretty damning to me. And later on, and you guys can go ahead and re-listen to the whole press conference, Jim Curtin talked about them not being great at playing with 3 in the back. And my question is, well, we saw the Union play 3 in the back a lot of times this season. And yes, I get part of it was because of players that were available. But at the same time, it's like, if you're not great at playing 3 in the back, guess that's you taking a risk, then why not just play more of a 4-4-2 flat at times this season? Why not try to trust some of these players? And yeah, I know it's easy to say with all these games in the past, but man, I mean, it was a fiery press conference from Jim Curtin. And like I said at the beginning of the show, there's going to be a lot of questions asked of Jim Curtin and Ernst Tanner come the end of the season press conference. And there should be a lot of questions asked. And hopefully, they don't beat around the questions asked, and hopefully we get good answers. But yeah, there's a lot of changes, I think, that need to be done with his team. And another thing that Jim Curtin was asked about was, rebuilding this team. Jim Curtin didn't say that it needs to be a complete tear down and build it back up. Yeah, he admitted that there should be changes. There will be changes to this roster. I think all of us know that. Alejandro Bedoya said after the game that there should be changes. Kai Wagner, yet again, says there should be changes, and we'll play a clip here from Kai in a second. But I do agree that there are still good players on this team, that you don't have to completely tear it down. And there's a good core group of players, and any successful team is going to be built through the spine. Yes, I do think the Union need to bring in another center back. You have the goalkeeper locked up. You have two center backs that I think are quality MLS players, but they should not be starting together anymore. You need a six. I don't think Danley's a six. I don't think Leon Flock's a six. You, for whatever reason, don't trust Jesus Bueno to play there. And if you did, I think we would have seen more game time for Jesus. You have the 10 and you have your strikers, but no, I would say you still need to go out there and get a third striker. Simon Denron's not it. But you have players you can build around. You have your fullbacks in Kai Wagner and Nathan Harriel. You have Daniel Gazdag. So, I mean, you have good players. And it's always been a question about depth. And that's what Alejandro Bedoya said after the game. That's what Kai Wagner said after the game. And why not? Why not just play what Kai Wagner had to say after the game?
Game a little bit more, and I feel like this year, I feel like everybody knows each other too much, or so much already. So everything, like everybody knows the core already, what we have, and it's like a lot of fighters on the field. It's a lot of like veterans who knows like the field and who knows how to play and all this stuff. And I said it often enough. I think when you see all the other teams that bring a lot of people like from the bench who can like just change the game a little bit more, like can also help like to change the game a little bit more. And I feel like this year we didn't have this enough. The team, the depth wasn't deep enough. I feel like it's all good. Like I love all our homegrowns, but like you don't win games in this league just with homegrowns. And I think we have to go back to get winning players who have the mentality to win every game. I saw too many players today in the locker room who really like probably don't care that we got out of the playoffs. And I think that's something what really like pisses me off. When you see like players who like don't care and just go home now and think, okay, nice, I have a vacation now in front of me. I'm not a player like this. This will stay a lot with me. The 2022 MLS Cup stayed a lot with me, a couple of weeks. So I think that's even worse today, probably, to not make the playoffs. But yeah.
Yeah, so pretty wild statement by Kai Wagner there. Throwing homegrowns under the bus, throwing teammates in general under the bus. And I saw some people say that, yeah, this is the right message, but the wrong person to be giving the message because of the antics Kai Wagner has shown the last couple of years with saying, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to stay, I want to play in Europe, blah, 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 and then eventually resigns with Union. I totally get that. Totally get that people don't think that the message came from the right person, but my argument would be I think he is the right person to give that message. He's the best left back in MLS, a top 3 best player on your team. He's already a top 5 Union player in club history. Left backs don't grow on trees. He's been your most consistent player since he's been here. You can rely on him health-wise. The chances that he creates are unbelievable as a left back. And yes, I know a lot of those are in dead ball situations and what have you, but Kai Wagner has been a fantastic Philadelphia Union player since 2019. And he's a guy that had aspirations, and I still believe has aspirations to play in Europe. And yes, he committed his future long-term to the Union. But I think if an offer good enough came for him, I think he'd be open to go. And I think you need more players with the mentality that Kai Wagner has. This is a player that had just joined the club when things started to turn around. And they started getting better and better and better. And how many times did we talk the last couple of years like, okay, look, the Union are getting one step closer to MLS Cup. Next year, they'll win another playoff game. Next year, they'll win the Eastern Conference Final. Next year, they'll win MLS Cup. And we saw the progression. And you guys, the fans, have said enough's enough. We want trophies. And if you were going to run this team back, you needed to win a trophy this season. They did not do that. And what's been the issue? It's been depth. Depth has been the issue the last couple seasons. Alejandro Bedoya echoed the same statement in the locker room, that there needs to be better depth. Andre Blake said that there needs to be better depth. And I don't need to bring up MLS Cup. Kai Wagner brought up MLS Cup. That stuck with him for a while. That game pissed him off because look at what LAFC brought off the bench. Look what the Union brought off the bench. And yes, we can play this what if game so many different ways. Any team can play that game. And that's what hurts. And I had a feeling that these players were still holding on to that hurt from MLS Cup. Alejandro Bedoya mentioned it. Kai Wagner mentioned it. You know other players are thinking about MLS Cup too. Because that's a devastating loss. To come back twice in that game. To then take the lead. And then blow it. And then lose in penalty kicks. That's devastating. And you keep majority of this team around that are coming off one of the most exciting, but one of the worst losses for a team ever in MLS, whether that be MLS regular season, playoffs, or the final itself. An exciting final, maybe the most exciting final. But the way that the Union went through so many different roller coaster emotions in that game, man, it's tough. And so I do think that these players are still holding on to that hurt. And that should be part of the reason why you blow this thing up. Not completely, but you get rid of a lot of those players that were on that team. And so you bring in new players that are motivated. Not saying that these guys aren't motivated, but you bring on players that didn't experience that heartbreak in 2022. Didn't experience the heartbreak last season in Cincinnati. And now experience not making the playoffs at all this year. So many roller coaster rides these players have been on. And it sucks. It absolutely sucks that this is the way that it ended. But you've got to move on from a lot of players. You try with depth in 2023 with Andres Pereira, with Joaquin Torres, with Damian Lowe. I know I mentioned that before. And it didn't work out. But like I said with Fabian Herbers, I do believe that MLS players that have MLS experience are worth taking the risk on. I would bring back Alejandro Bedoya. A little bit cheeky in his end of the season press conference with us, saying, a little stat for you guys. We had more wins with me in the starting lineup than we had without me in the starting lineup. I didn't realize that, but that is a hell of a stat to throw out there. And I think Bedoya, he admitted it too, that he's accepted his role. He understands his role, that this is okay with him. And he's still producing offensively. So why not? Why not bring back Bedoya if he's fine with his role? If you know that number is right for you and the club, why not? Why not bring him back? But look, it's so frustrating. It is so frustrating to see time and time again. The depth is costing this team. You go out, you get a 6, you get a U22 midfielder, a U22 striker, you need another center back. And I think you'll be good. I really do. I really, really do think this team would be good. You have good quality players still. And God, can you guys imagine if Ty Baribo still didn't get his chance this season? Now you have to go out and sign 2 strikers because you don't know what you have in Baribo. You're assuming he's probably not good. Simon Dinaran doesn't work out. Chris Donovan's not an MLS striker. Half the fan base, I feel like, wants to move on from Mikel Uor, and half of them understand that, yeah, he's a quality player. Man, it's crazy. It's crazy times for the Union. Like I said, this is going to be the most important transfer window ever for this club. Ever. I feel confident saying that. And I do completely understand I completely understand if the union don't go out there and sign a whole bunch of players, quality players. I completely understand why some fans are done with the club, why they would be done with the club. That trust between the fans and the ownership group completely gone. I completely understand if they let you down again this winter, why you guys would feel that way. But like I said at the beginning, I'm optimistic, and I do believe this club has the right people in the right places in the front office. You had the owners go on record at the town hall and say they will spend. I do expect Ernst Tenner and Jim Curtin to come out at the end of their season press conference and say, look, we are going to spend money. And I do think we see more and more pressure from the players to say, hey, look, spend money, spend money, spend money. Get us quality players. We have a good core group of players here, but we need depth. These core group of players can get us back to an MLS Cup, but we need good depth. And so I'm optimistic. And if they fail this transfer window, then I might be on board with a lot of you guys that are completely freaking out on Twitter. But if you guys aren't following the podcast on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, follow at Free Kick Pod, wherever you get your podcast at Free Kick. My personal at It's a Todd Life on Twitter, at It's a Todd Life _ on Instagram. Check out the YouTube page, youtube.com/freekickpod. And check out the Substack, thefreekick.substack.com. We can get the goals breakdown videos, podcasts, articles, all that jazz in one spot. And there will still be episodes, guys. There will still be podcast episodes throughout the off season. A lot of good stuff, I think, we're going to have planned to talk about. A lot of good episodes. Like I said, in the latest goals breakdown video, you guys will see a top 10 saves goal video sometime at the end of this week, probably Friday night, Saturday morning, maybe. I don't know. Let me know on social media. When do you guys prefer to watch YouTube videos? And then next week, we'll do our top 10 goals of the season video. So, yes, that will be the end of the goals breakdown video once I do the top 10 saves and goals. But all the support you guys have given me this season, whether it be the podcast, articles, goals breakdown videos, I appreciate it so much. And I can't wait till we go back to doing the live streams here in a couple weeks and getting you guys to participate and involved. I love it, love it, love it. But with that said, my name is Todd, and this is the Free Kick Podcast.